Smalls. I suppose you don't even know who the babe is either. It's plugged. What? Chewing tobacco?
Backy, man.
What do you do with it? You're killing me, Smalls.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. In last week, maybe a couple weeks ago, I did a pretty interesting video. It got a lot of feedback regarding 5 great comic book stories that, in my estimation, kind of damaged comic books long term. Not because of the techniques or the story was bad. It was just because creators took the wrong lessons or took those tools and used them incorrectly in the future, and they kind of had bad lasting effects. Today, I'm going to talk about 5 comic books that I think really changed the industry. Obviously, I could have used all the ones we already talked about, but we talked about those issues already. And I'm bringing back Yul Carter because I know you wasn't on this, right? You want to talk about these comics?
It's like a part 2 almost. Just
absolutely. This is the sequel.
That's right, the sequel. What's good about comics?
Well, there's so much good. What's great about comics is Thinking Critical YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing here, man? Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. You're going to want all this content. And if you enjoy what Yul Carter brings to the table, you can go to the video description. There's a link to his channel if you want to subscribe to his channel. There's going to be an icon at the 1-minute mark. At the very end, there's going to be another icon, so you can go subscribe to his channel and get some more of that wonderful Yul flavor on your YouTube.
Thank you very much. Yeah, come say hi at Fantastic Comics.
All right, so this is a very hard list to pare down, and inevitably I'm going to piss somebody off because I didn't include the story they said, or I included something they didn't think. If you have a list of 5 comics you think really changed the industry and you want to put them in the comment section, we would love that. We want to hear what your thoughts are. This is not a definitive list. These are just 5 that kind of came up off the top of my head that I thought, man, that really kind of changed the game, and I want to present them here to Yul Carter to see what his thoughts are. Now, the first one, this creator was on the last list, but this is a different comic book. This is Frank Millar's Sin City. Really amazing that he created his own connected kind of shared comic book universe outside of the big 2, created it on its own, had a very distinct artistic flavor to it, a lot of symbolism and things like that in there. And he was able to actually transition it over to movies and really show that you can make comic books and artistic interpretation of comic books on the big screen. Certainly influenced creators like Christopher Nolan and a lot of the more realistic, set in today's kind of atmosphere superhero movies that we get nowadays. And I really think Frank Millar's Sin City really had a long-lasting effect that has really changed the industry.
Oh, yeah, sure. They built an imprint because of Sin City and Dark Horse. They had a Legends imprint where he and John Byrne, Art Adams, and others would take their stuff. But before that, Sin City ran in Dark Horse Presents. And it was him leaving DC, him leaving Marvel and going and doing his own thing. It was black and white. It was noir. It wasn't really something that was always done in comic books.
Not superheroes, really?
Yeah, you could take a look at his Daredevil and say, oh, that makes sense that he would go to this situation, to Sin City from there. But, there's a connective tissue with all his work that's maybe going here. But this is his first time where he was doing what he wanted to do, I think, or what he ultimately was meant to do. And I like the list that you came up with because there's some connectivity when it comes to the fact that these people kind of like this was their thing that they are known for, and all the way through. And like you don't think anymore after Sin City when Frank Millar's really creating stuff. I know he did 300 and a few other things, but this is his baby. This is what he was like ultimately meant to do, I think. And it's very artistic. It's reminiscent of pulp novels, and there's just a really cool aesthetic that actually translates to movies very well. And I think you can take a look at like success of people that have comic book movies out there or television shows that have done well. And you could probably say, thank you, Frank Millar. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, he's definitely opened up a lot of doors. I remember seeing some of those images directly from the movie from Robert Rodriguez, and then you see the art from the comic, and you're like, probably the most faithful adaptation of a comic book property ever put on a movie screen.
Yeah, and again, it just doesn't have to be Superman or Spider-Man, or the X-Men or the Avengers. It's just, and you could tell your own story. I think that's the reason why Image is the way they are now. I mean, at first it was just guys going over from Marvel to do superhero stuff, but
making new versions of the old superheroes.
Pretty much, exactly. But Frank Miller does this stuff over at Dark Horse, and now we see Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka, and now we see Donny Cates coming over and doing his thing. And, these could all easily be, properties, and a lot of them are. Things like Descender were optioned before it even came out in comic book form. So, these companies are out there paying attention, and thank you, Frank Miller, again.
Yeah, we might not have a Black Hammer universe, without Frank Miller showing the way that you can have a shared, connected, smaller universe on a different imprint. We're going to take a little bit different direction. That is a very dark, gritty comic book, very much in the style of Frank Miller. And we're going to go to something a little bit more for children. Well, definitely more for children. This is Smile from Raina Telgemeier. Now, she is essentially, with the success of this book, I believe it was on the New York Times bestseller list for like 220 weeks or something insane like this. This was after they had taken graphic novels off the bestseller list, and she obviously transcended the graphic novel medium and was just on there as a book. And it's absolutely insane the effects that this has had on comic books. Now, superhero graphic novels are outsold by children's graphic novels, and you can point right to Smile by Raina Telgemeier, and you can say that she basically created a revolution, an entire market unto itself.
Yeah, I don't know who took advantage of who. Was it Telgemeier of Scholastic or the other way around? But it's been a very successful partnership for sure. And there's a lot of other companies out there that aren't Scholastic or their graphics program that are out there doing the same thing that you may or may not know. Like there's First Second, there's Boom or Boom Kids, which is an imprint of Boom. There's just a bunch of other places that are doing these kinds of things. And some companies are actually, like DC, we see their young adult line now. And Marvel looks like they're getting in the game. And the future's wide open for kids, for sure. And it's probably due almost solely to Telgemeier. Her stuff, wow, it sells very well in my store. I just want you to know that.
And it's crazy. And you think of like Dav Pilkey, he actually started writing before her and actually had some hits when you think of Captain Underpants and some of the other stuff he did. But I think, with the way that she had marketed her book, the way it blew up on Scholastic, now we have Dogman. That thing is absolutely enormous. And, and I think she's a trailblazer, but he's almost kind of neck and neck with her. He's really had a big impact as well.
Oh, sure. His stuff just skews a little younger, I think. But the thing is that even the people that buy Smile want to buy Dogman also. For the most, it's great how both. You think Smile or Raina's other books, and on first look you might think, oh, this is just a girl's book. A comic for girls. And you might say the same thing for Dogman, except for with boys. But the thing is that girls are reading Dogman and boys are reading Smile. And it's really well done because the characters are real. They, maybe not Dogman, but there's some element of it that just like speaks to the people that are reading the book. And it's good stuff. And it's getting younger readers into comic books, into the medium. I know you sell mostly graphic novels at your store, and it brings people into your store. It's one of your best sellers, right? Yeah. Oh, definitely. It definitely is. It's the top. Well, I mean, there's a few, and they're almost all published by Scholastic. But there's a few other books that are out there that you'll be like, oh wow, that sells well too. Like Lumberjanes, we had a really good run with that for a while. The Dustin Nguyen, who has done some really awesome Batman back in the day. Well, I shouldn't say back in the day. This makes it sound like it's a long time ago. But like within the last 10 years, He's been doing Scholastic books that are DC related, and they're really super cute. So like those things are out there. You have the Young Jedi Academy and Perennial. I mean, we're talking about Raina Telgemeier, but Bone still sells very well, and Jeff Smith really carved a niche in that audience also. But Telgemeier's blown up. She has way different types of books than, just one ongoing series like a Bone, and different subject matter throughout, and some are really I wouldn't say dark, but there's like if you read Ghost, that's a tearjerker for sure.
All right, well, let's get back into some more dark, gritty action, and this time it is going to be superheroes, and this is Todd McFarlane's Spawn series, the longest running independent creator-owned comic book series in the history of comics. It's well over 300 now. Obviously, Todd McFarlane was the flagship artist over at Marvel when he was doing Amazing Spider-Man. I think he was the writer-artist for that one. Took his talents, decided to go to South Beach. Well, no, he took him over to Image with the Image 7 when they basically gutted the Spider-Man and X-Men offices. They've created a lot of characters, but really Spawn was the flagship character for Image Comics from day one. Hasn't always been their bestseller, but it is their bestseller today. It has had a massive amount of staying power. It is a superhero comic outside of the big two, which I think is very interesting that he's managed to make it work. It has transcended comic books. There's been multiple television shows, cartoons. We've had him on the big screen. Sounds like we're going to have him back there again. And Todd McFarlane has really been a trailblazer no matter what he's done. Obviously, with his Spawn action figures and stuff like that, everything the dude touches, if he decides it's going to be great, he makes it great.
Yeah, he makes it great. Spawn. I would say that Spawn was the most important character of the entire Image 7. It came out more frequently than any of the other books. It had a unique look. I'm going to say unique look. And of course, we had Todd McFarlane doing the art. And he told a pretty good story. Spawn was not actually my favorite comic of those books, but it still was really good. I mean, people think fondly of it, is what I mean. And it has, like you said, it's had staying power. Sometimes through Todd McFarlane's, just because of his own grit, that he's like, I'm going to keep it going. He could have restarted it or, rebranded it or, he has at times. He's had spin-offs and things like that. But he's just kept it going. I think he respects a numbering and the fact that something is, it's important for this comic book to keep going, especially with its numbering. And I like that a lot. It harkens back to, old days of comic books where something might, have 450 issues and, what other comic out there can right now.
Todd McFarlane is a wonderful evaluator of artistic talent. I believe Tony Daniels has been on that series. Jason Sean Alexander was recently on it. I think Stepan Sajic, was he on it?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
He's one of the artists. And obviously the big one, Greg Capullo.
Yeah, Greg Capullo.
So this thing has impacted a lot of comic books, including heavy impacts on Batman, the best-selling comic book in the industry.
Oh, yeah, sure. Greg Capullo gives a lot of credit to Todd McFarlane. I've heard interviews with him, and he sounds like he kind of saved his career, And when Greg Capullo wasn't actually putting stuff out, Todd McFarlane still helped him out. It's cool. And Greg Capullo, now he's like, what? I liked him all the way back on the X-Force days, and when he did a 3-issue stint with Grant Morrison, I think it was like 16, 17, 18, something like that. I was very excited. That was a very good storyline. And yeah, when he went on Spawn, it was McFarlane, I think, was inking Capullo, and I think he helped him out a lot there also. And evaluate. It might not be Sepchik, actually. It might be Kradansky, if you can believe it. And I know
that's a lot of people.
I know a lot of people.
Kradansky.
Yeah, a lot of people dog on him, but with the atmospheric style of Spawn, I thought it worked really well. And yeah, that Sean Alexander stuff is excellent. If you look at Curse of Spawn, guys like Ashley Wood and Ben Templesmith were on those books. he's given guys a chance to write that might not have been able to, or he's welcomed people. See, like a guy like Eric Larson, he's the only guy that really draws Dragon for the most part. He's the only guy that writes the stories. So Tom McFarlane is not that way. I mean, he always has his name on the story, but he'll have like a co-writer also. He'll let people do other series. Brian Michael Bendis pretty much got his like mainstream start because of the work that he did on Sam and Twitch. And that was I know we dog on Brian Michael Bendis a lot, but his Sam and Twitch was awesome. It was so good. So yeah, Tom McFarlane's Spawn's very important. I don't disagree.
All right, so we're going to get into some more classic stuff here, and we're talking about groundbreaking comic books that really have stood the test of time. It's so hard to just pick two. I took two that I think really had a lot of impact. The first one's going to be Amazing Spider-Man 121, The Death of Gwen Stacy by Jerry Conway. Up to that point, it was almost mind-boggling that you could take the love interest of the hero and lose them, like where the hero fails and he doesn't triumph over evil and save the woman that he loves. And to experience that moment, I think it changed Spider-Man as a character, but it also changed comics where people, if you use it effectively, you should sometimes, in the right circumstances, go in there and take a mainstay character out to really shake up the character and get some type of growth in there, because characters do become static over time. The moxie, the testicular fortitude on Jerry Conway, who I think was about 20 or 21 at the time, to go and do something like this with a character Stan Lee had a great deal in creating, and to take that character away and to execute it so wonderfully in a page that stands the test of time. It's something Spider-Man readers will never forget. Very tragic, but also a wonderful piece of artistry.
Yeah, I agree. I used to have that. And then, of course, then he talk about Moxie. Then he goes and kills Green Goblin in the next issue. Wow. Yeah, it was.
Well, I mean, they killed Joker off in Batman 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, characters are like, so this is the thing about Spider-Man. Obviously Uncle Ben died, and just before this, Captain Gwen Stacy died. But if you didn't realize that Peter Parker was doomed to be a kind of like a lovable loser, he's not the guy that's gonna like always succeed in Marvel, especially. Then this is gonna cement that fact for you. I'm a Gwen Stacy guy. Just let you know. I thought her and Peter's way, that Mary Jane, please. It wasn't until the last time they got together, by the way, Mary Jane, that I thought, all right, they're okay. Then one more day. But yeah, that was very... So when I was reading comic books, it was after this had happened. So you kind of have to go and track it back down, obviously. There weren't like collections that were just always telling the stories. So you had to get like a treasury size that might go out of print that might have that or something. So eventually I got 121, 122, started building my Spider-Man collection. Yeah, it's a comic book of lore for sure. I love that one. And you're right. It's a very powerful scene when Spidey's holding Gwen and he's like shaking at his fist in the sky. And yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, you just think about some of the iconography you've gotten with Peter Parker over the years, when he's never give up. He finally lifts himself up out of the rubble or whatever. He can overcome anything, but can he overcome the loss of the love of his life?
Yeah, and for the longest time, the debate is like, well, who killed Gwen Stacy? Was it him when he webbed her? Did he snap her neck? Was it just the act that Green Goblin pushed her off? And I love it. It's always like a nice little conversation that you can have with that story too, in that regard too.
Green Goblin killed Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
Even if the web did it, he was trying to save her. It's like if you're giving somebody CPR and something happens, you are delivering life-saving efforts.
Yeah.
At least that's what I tell myself as a service member.
That's what you gotta do, man.
Sometimes bad things happen when.
Well, it's like you said, Peter Parker, Spider-Man has to, he has to come to grips and figure out a way past this. And even when we read Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale's Blue, Spider-Man Blue, he's writing a love letter or, a conversation that he's having with the dead Gwen Stacy. Mary Jane knows that this is going on, and that's some powerful stuff. And, this was like a very important character. And I know that it's popular to fridge characters and stuff like that, but it is our character is the main character, and these other supporting cast are here to make them better. So there you go. Gwen Stacy had to die.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's get to the it's not the number one, the fifth one that I've chosen. I'm using it last for a reason, but it is basically the comic book that started the superhero genre, probably the most important comic book in the history of the industry. Action Comics number 1. First appearance of Superman, obviously Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster. Just looking at the cover, it's just so iconic. He's got that green car above his head. It's obviously he's saving someone's life. It changed your life. It's changed my life. It's probably changed everyone. Anyone who's watching this video right now has had an impact on their life because of Action Comics number 1. Without that, you probably don't have this wonderful medium, this wonderful community that we have right here. And we could all think that very comic because that is the beginning point of all of our journey.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like one of those things like, an Action Comics number 1. It's kind of like winning the lottery or thinking of winning the lottery or just, I've never been in his presence. And it's got this magical quality to it that, and Superman also is the same way. It's just like the perfect comic. It's got all the extra stuff that nobody knows about. Just the one little Superman story.
I don't think it's happenstance that Action Comics number 1 is the comic that did this. There are other superheroes happening around it, but Superman is the iconic superhero. He's the best superhero ever created, in my opinion, just as far as someone that you would want your children to look up to, that if he was in the real world, you would never have to fear him. You would know he was always going to do what he could to do what was right. Truth, justice, in the American way. He's basically apple pie at this moment. He's pure Americana. He doesn't just belong to America. Obviously, he belongs to anyone that is a comic book fan, as far as I'm concerned. But he's quintessential America, in my opinion. And there's a reason that Action Comics number 1 is the beginning of the industry. He's essentially the perfect superhero created.
Yeah, so people, I know it's hard to believe, but there was a time when Superman was the number 1 superhero selling comic. It wasn't Batman or Spider-Man or X-Men or anything like that. It was Superman, and he had a lock on that title for a while, for a long while. They would even say it on the comics. Still number one selling comic book. I think he's. I personally, I'm. If it's Marvel, it's Spider-Man. If it's a group, it's the X-Men, maybe the Teen Titans, and then if it's DC, it's Superman all the way. So those are my faves, and I love Superman. He's had great stories, throughout my life. I mean, and there's so much. I've been in conversation lately where people were talking about covers not matching the interiors, but over the course of years, there's been like all these great Neil Adams covers and Luis Garcia Lopez covers, and all the while it was like Kurt Swan or I can't think of some of the other older artists, but just doing it for years on end, and it's powerful stuff, and it didn't change, and it was it's so sad that we can't recapture his greatness in comic books quite the same way like it used to be, because I would have loved to have lived through that during that time.
Well, I do believe that we will see a renaissance for Superman. We kind of got that in Rebirth. That was a good time to be a Superman fan. Between Superman, Action Comics, and Super Sons, I mean, you were getting some great Superman stories essentially every single week. And I think we'll get there again. But there's a reason that Batman's probably the most popular character, because you can adjust him to the times. Whereas I think Superman is quintessential to the moment that he was introduced. And while you can change him here and there, I don't think you can really darken him up or take away that morality, because once you do that, he's no longer Superman.
Can I? All right. So there's talk sometimes about you couldn't say truth, justice, in the American way anymore with Superman, and then there was that whole thing with Tom King and Dean Cain, right? I think that's kind of true, because ever since I'm sorry that we're going to be dogging on the comic right now, but ever since Dark Knight Returns, Superman had that kind of I'll do anything for the government. I'm a Boy Scout. I'll just blah blah blah. I'm a sheep, type situation, and that's how a lot of people always think of him. And it's really hard to go back to, hey, I can still be pro-American and pro the world all at the same time. It's got to be all or none these days, and it feels like sometimes that that aspect of Superman is a little stripped from how it used to be. And I think until we can be cool with that, Superman isn't it just isn't that way right now, at least too often when he's presented to us. How do you
Certainly
feel about
some
that?
pieces of him missing.
Yeah.
And it's quite evident. It's plain to see when you read the comic, and that's too bad. But I think we'll get back there. I'm very hopeful, at least.